Everybody who learns the alphabet knows what Z stands for, so I don't have to tell you the name of the animal that has these distinctive markings. Francis has always been very fond of zebras with their funny coats and high-spirited behavior, so we decided to shoot some film of them when we were in the Serengeti. One of the few places where you can see them in really large numbers. Herds of several hundreds are quite common, especially when they go on their long migration in search of food and water. Outside the Serengeti, herds are smaller and migration rare. Originally, we thought we'd have no difficulty in observing them, with so many around to choose from. But pretty quickly we realized that we were going to have problems. They just wouldn't let us get near enough. We'd approach, slowly and quietly, only to see them disappearing towards the horizon. Nothing but retreating hindquarters all the time. It was very irritating. Naturally, there's a good reason for this behavior. Zebras are obviously very conspicuous animals at close quarters, and they are well aware of this. They never try to escape observation by standing still, the usual trick of animals which rely on their coloring for concealment, but always run from danger instead. But we noticed that they didn't always flee as soon as they spotted us, waiting until we were a certain distance away before suddenly taking to their heels. Just how close an animal allows itself to be approached varies from species to species, and a lot depends, of course, on the identity of the intruder. Usually it's man that's feared most. Lions, for instance, are regarded with less suspicion. This is probably because prey animals are adept at reading the behavior of local predators and understand their hunting habits. The appearance of our truck was frightening the zebras, so we had to find some way of avoiding triggering off their urge to flee. Francis suggested that we might achieve this by painting the truck to look as much like a zebra as possible. Fortunately, we were able to find plenty of willing hands. Francis's little African friend, Thierry, went and told his friends of our plan, and they all offered to help. I'd heard of this kind of trick being used before, but I wasn't sure it would work, although the general idea seemed feasible. It relies on the fact that zebra markings are unique and highly conspicuous. In the zebra's mind, anything bearing these markings really ought to be friendly. I didn't believe that we could wholly persuade them that our truck was just an oddly shaped member of their own species, but I hoped that their automatic response to stripy markings might inhibit the urge to flee. Well, there was only one way to know for certain. And here are the first victims of our little deception, all turning to look at the extraordinary apparition which has just come up over the skyline. And no wonder. It sounds like a truck. It even smells like a truck. But it certainly doesn't look like a truck. Or does it? It's very suspicious, whatever it is. But first reactions are encouraging. At least they aren't running away yet. So we'll start by just skirting the fringes of the herd very slowly at first. And notice that it's not only zebras that we have to convince. There are gnu and hartebeest mixed up with them as well. We just have to hope that none of them are feeling very nervous at the moment. So far, so good. The next step is to creep slowly forward to see if we can get right in among them. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about the engine noise. But luckily, it doesn't seem to worry them unduly. They seem quite happy to graze, with the truck only a few yards away. this one is obviously pretty puzzled by us. But our stripy disguised has definitely done the trick. I must admit that I find the zebra's markings most puzzling. They seem to be a complete contradiction of protective coloration, so important for animals that are hunted by others, what we call prey animals. But beyond a certain distance, their stripes do seem to merge into an indistinct gray, especially when there's a heat haze. In fact, I've been told that when aerial population counts are taken, zebras are much more difficult to count than other animals. So stripes may be better camouflaged than we think. But we need much more information on how animals actually see to be sure of this. More wildebeest. This mixing of species is very common, and it doesn't lead to any marked competition for food as a whole. Grazers are choosy about what they'll eat, and it's quite possible for several species to occupy the same range, each grazing the kind of grass it prefers without robbing each other of food. In fact, conflict of any kind between different species of prey animal is rare. As a whole, they ignore each other entirely. The one exception to this is when an animal shows alarm. Then everybody reacts immediately. As you can see, zebras are very sociable animals. Physical contact with each other is extremely important to them. It plays a large part in reinforcing family relationships. For although large herds of zebra are commonplace here, these are only loose associations. The basic group is the family, usually consisting of a stallion and up to 6 mares with their foals. It's an extremely stable unit, and there's no hostility between a stallion and his male offspring. When fights do occur, they are usually between 2 stallions competing for an unattached mare. Though there's a great deal of playful sparring between young stallions in bachelor groups. These groups consist of males who leave their mothers at about the age of 3 for a few years of male company. Eventually they desert their bachelor friends and start families of their own. Once a family has been established, this is one that we are looking at now, it's only the young zebras who move out. The males leave for bachelor herds, and the females are taken over by foreign stallions as soon as they are mature enough to breed, at about 1 or 2 years of age. But the adults have a very stable relationship. A stallion will always fetch back a truant mare, and if by some mischance he is killed, the family doesn't split up. It's always adopted as a whole by another stallion, though not without competition. Francis once asked me why zebras always look so sleek and healthy. I think the answer to this is that they store fat under their skins and not around the heart. This is different from most other animals living in tropical climates, like eland, for instance, these large antelopes mixed up with the zebras. Now, this is very strange, because depositing fat in this way makes it difficult to get rid of excess heat. And, as you know, this is a problem which all mammals that maintain a stable body temperature have to cope with. It's been suggested that their markings may have something to contribute here, acting rather like Venetian blinds. In other words, absorbing heat through the black stripes and reflecting it off the white. But frankly, I don't know if there's anything in this idea. All that's certain is that zebras manage to cope with the problem quite adequately. They never seem to suffer from the heat at all. You can't even have a snooze here without someone coming along and bothering you. Really, it's too much. Zebras are, of course, a kind of wild horse, but they are also rather distantly related to rhinos, though you'd never think it to look at them. And it's interesting that horses, rhinos and zebras all share a parasite called the botfly. The larvae of this fly live in the zebra's stomach, though I can't say that they seem to do them any great harm. Now, look how this one suddenly changes his mood. A moment ago he was quite sociable, but now he's laid his ears back and his whole manner is prickly and edgy. I wonder why. As usual, the boys are the ones who dictate what we have to film. And this is the zebra that Francis noticed. I wonder where he's going. He certainly looks very purposeful. Off to fetch back a truant wife, perhaps? It's difficult to say. Well, he certainly seems to want to make an issue of whatever it was that was bothering him. Notice, however, that everybody else ignores the disturbance. They've seen it all before. We seem to be in the middle of an arena. Francis keeps spotting more fights. This one looks as if it's in real earnest, but frankly it's difficult to be sure. Zebras are aggressively high-spirited animals, as you will have noticed, and the sparring matches are a necessary social activity as far as stallions are concerned. It's important for the species that the healthiest and strongest animals should reproduce. And it's fighting like this which ensures that the strongest gets the best grazing and the most mares. But this is social activity of a more peaceful sort. The foal is not far short of his full height. That's in the region of 12 hands, or just over 4 feet. They are born after a gestation period of about 9 months, like humans, and at any time of the year. Though there's quite a sharp peak in births in the middle of January. Newborn, they weigh about 70 pounds, and their markings are brownish, rather than black at first. It's about 7 months before they are fully weaned, by which time they've developed good strong jaw muscles and have their first set of teeth. Useful for grazing, of course, but as you can see here, for mutual grooming as well. Francis can't resist getting a picture of this pair, a perfect example of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. It helps to keep down the tick population, of course, quite apart from giving them a great deal of pleasure. And they aren't the only ones who are pleased with life at the moment.